In tonight's scripture, we'll be looking at a light unto the path from Psalms 119, 105. So here we are. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path.
Absolutely. Certainly, most of us have heard this at some point throughout our lives. Certainly important in light of the role that Scripture, that the Word of the Lord ought to play in our lives. And you'll hear that oftentimes today in society, of course, referenced in this way. You'll say, oh, someone might acknowledge, they say, oh, it had an important impact on the foundations of Western civilization. And oh, it's a really great piece of literature. Well, sure, it is, but it's much more than that, actually. It's actual stories, things that actually happened, and it provides actual guidance for how we ought to live out our lives, live out our faith. And as it turns out, faith actually looks like something. Jake?
Yes, and it also, again, it cannot be taken out of context because if it is, then some people may say, well, that means it could be anybody's word. But when we're talking about your word, we're talking about the Lord's word. And so it's very important to know that. And I think one of the big takeaways from this passage is when we talk about a light onto the path, people may go through some very dark times. Of course, tomorrow we have Friday the 13th. Sometimes dark things can happen on Friday the 13th. And so it's very important that if you go into a period of darkness, that you go back into scripture, that you go back into the word, because his word is a light and you can shine that light. You can shine the light of the Lord onto the path and make it through times of darkness.
Absolutely, Jake. Certainly important to reference there. Again, certainly the note of darkness is important to note. Again, when I initially take from that, of course, is the role of guidance, the role of instruction there, sort of, but true too, just as well. Certainly, going through dark times in your life, again, no less, plays an important role during those times. And certainly, something we mentioned in past edition of GWP Words of Scripture. Of course, Jake, like you mentioned, context is important. Even in Scripture, the devil misquotes it himself. It's very easy to do when you take it out of context. So that's important. Of course, we're called to be wise as serpents, as and as innocent as doves. Again, recognizing the appropriate role of Scripture. And again, that's not to say that guidance in that is not important. No, of course it is. And again, it's important to have some of that so that we understand what we're reading. Again, when it comes to that. So, of course, certainly the role of a shepherd and having that lamp, light unto my feet, lamp unto my path, certainly is important. Plays that role of guidance just as well. The role of a shepherd is important. So this is not to negate that in any sense, but it's important to do your research, Jake. As you mentioned, be aware of the context. And as we're commanded, be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves.
Yes, and my final message is just remember in this situation that context is king, and the context is that Jesus is king.